So I'm beginning to notice a trend in liberal politics, where one side is saying, yes, we need to improve things, but we need to take the slow and steady approach because you can't have all the change you want at once. While the other side is saying, no, we must push for true progressive change and stop resting on our laurels. It's the pragmatists versus the true progressives. Right now, this is reflected in the Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders race that's happening in the Democratic Party. First, let me show you both sides of this argument, and then I'll tell you where I stand. Vox.com has made the argument for the pragmatic approach, the approach that Hillary Clinton is taking. So let's take a look at that side of the argument first. Sanders can talk all he wants about political revolutions, but no one seriously doubts that the next Democratic president will face a Republican House, a 5-4 Republican majority on the Supreme Court, and a country that mistrusts government action. In that world, the world we actually live in, there's a strong case to be made for a pragmatic approach that respects the sensitivities of the electorate and the power of the status quo. Clinton's best political quality is that she truly understands both the issues and the political institutions that mediate them. So Vox is making the case that if we want to get liberal policies pushed through, the best way towards that is through a candidate like Hillary Clinton, who's still offering change, but a more subdued change than her opponent Bernie Sanders. Because, as Vox is arguing, offering big change will be met with immediate hiccups. Vox has taken the side of the pragmatist. I don't think there's anything wrong with being pragmatic, but it's the approach to it that, in my opinion, Vox is missing here. But I'll get to that later. Let's take a look at what a publication on the other side of the argument thinks. This is from The Nation, a progressive publication that has recently thrown their support behind Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has summoned the people to a political revolution, arguing that the change our country so desperately needs can only happen when we wrest our democracy from the corrupt grip of Wall Street bankers and billionaires. His campaign's funding reflects this commitment, spurring the support of corporate super PACs and relying instead on millions of grassroots donors. In Sanders, Democrats have a candidate who can truly walk the walk, a civil rights marcher in the 1960s with a consistent record of supporting racial justice, women's equality, and LGBT rights. His audacious agenda proves that money in politics doesn't widen the debate, rather it narrows the range of possibility. While Sanders understands this, we fear that his chief rival for the Democratic nomination, Hillary Clinton, does not. Her talk of seeking common ground with Republicans and making deals to get things done in Washington will not bring the change that is so desperately needed. So The Nation makes the argument that Bernie Sanders, because he's not funded by big banks and billionaires as Hillary Clinton and the majority of Congress is, he's free to push back against a system that has, up to this point, only allowed for marginal change at a time. So where do I stand? I'm so against the idea that you can't push for real progressive change because it's not pragmatic. The world is different now than the 90s. We have the internet. We have social media. Because of that, 20 years ago, Bernie Sanders wouldn't be where he is right now in the Democratic race. A lot has changed and a lot more can change. You just have to actually go out and push the ideas instead of assuming you can't do it before you even try. The issue the United States has had for the past 8 years is one of partisanship. Congress wasn't working with Barack Obama on anything, regardless of the fact that he came to the table with already compromised solutions. For example, healthcare. Obama was not trying to pass what progressives want, which is true universal healthcare. Instead, before even trying to pass true universal healthcare, he came to the table with a compromise, a healthcare system that is still controlled by insurance companies, a similar plan to the one that Republican Bob Dole pushed in the 90s, not to mention what Republican and former presidential candidate Mitt Romney pushed in his own state. So of course Republicans loved it and helped Obama pass it with ease. Wrong. Congress still made it as hard as possible for it to get through, and as a result, Republicans have tried to repeal it over 50 times. Obama took the pragmatic approach and look where it got him. A greatly compromised healthcare plan that had to go through multiple changes before it got passed and still faced Supreme Court challenges and votes to repeal. So if a Democratic president is going to face opposition regardless of what they try to propose, why not push for the whole thing? That way you at least energize people in America with big ideas, which gets them involved in the political process where they have a say, instead of constantly pushing for legislation that only attempts to keep big corporations, Wall Street, and lobbies happy.